Hello and welcome to Different Leaf, a show for new and experienced cannabis consumers. I'm Brit Smith. This episode, we're going on the road to discover what's going on with cannabis in the great state of Texas. Now, you may be surprised to hear that there's anything happening in the Lone Star State with cannabis besides a small but mighty medical marijuana program. But ever since hemp was legalized nationwide in 2018, Texas and other states with no legal adult use cannabis has seen a rapidly growing CBD industry with a long list of top-notch relaxing products. And there are now some really dope cannabis community events, all centered around the stuff that can be extracted from hemp. Now let's clarify, hemp and cannabis are the same plant. The only difference is, by the US government's definition, hemp has less than 0.3% THC, the stuff that gets us high. So, when hemp was legalized 5 years ago, Texans were able to start enjoying a plethora of low THC cannabis products, full of extracts like CBD, which is good for anxiety, CBN, which helps with sleep, CBG, which is great for inflammation, and they've got Delta 8, which is a byproduct of the CBD extraction process that gives you just a little bit of a buzz. And they've got it in almost all the same forms that we have in the north and out west, including flower, vapes, edibles, drinks, topicals, tinctures, just no concentrates and only tiny amounts of THC. At the start of legal hemp, CBD shops started popping up in strip malls across America, and Texas was no exception. But lately, folks in Texas have started opting for more enjoyable social ways to buy, consume, and connect over cannabis. What shocked me the most about going to Texas was to see that just like in Massachusetts and California, Texas has high-end dispensaries where you can smell the different kinds of flower you want to buy. They've got cannabis advocates as speakers at high-profile events like South by Southwest. And they've got CBD social clubs for the community to come together and toke and twerk or puff and paint just to get a little spacey off some hemp joints without the fear of the law. Like I said, the only difference is there's not much THC, and that's it. As I discovered, that's also not necessarily a bad thing. This episode, we're going to see what kinds of hemp products and cannabinoids people in Texas are trying, what they feel like, where they're coming from, and who's buying and selling them, and how new communities are connecting over the plant at social events. We'll also chat about the medical cannabis scene in Texas by talking to a medical dispensary employee, medical cannabis advocates from both sides of the political aisle, and a Texas state lawmaker. We're heading to the state that I call my American home, Texas, where everything is bigger except for access to THC. When I first came to the US in 2006, the first place that I lived was the college town of Denton, about an hour north of Dallas. In late 2022, Denton was one of 5 Texas cities that showed that the times they are a-changin' because citizens voted to decriminalize low-level possession of marijuana. Despite it passing with overwhelming support, lawmakers have been pushing back on the will of the people, saying that local decriminalization is too hard a rule to implement because it conflicts with state law. But there are a few major groups that are still pushing for legalization in Texas, including conservatives and medical advocates. For my first stop, I sat down at a cafe in Denton with one of the state's leading medical advocates, who is also one of the people behind the city's decriminalization measure. Chris Grizzola, also known in the Texas cannabis community as Gramps, is part of the Dallas-Fort Worth NORML chapter, and he's the treasurer of the Texas Cannabis Collective. It turns out Gramps' story is much like that of countless American medical advocates in states where the medical program has super tight rules. He wants medical marijuana to be expanded because, sadly, he had a loved one who would have used it and who really could have gotten some help from it, but he didn't quite meet the state's stringent medical marijuana patient requirements, and he didn't want to break the law.
I was 15 months old when we came to Texas, so I'm Texas. DFW area for the most part. Been in Denton for about 7 years now, Denton area.
Before you were an advocate,
I've done a lot of things actually, but the longest has been construction for about 30, almost 35 years.
So what got you interested in advocacy?
Well, that's a little bit different story. I mean, I've used cannabis for basically my whole adult life.
For
What
pleasure?
initially was recreational, to be honest. I had no clue about any medical benefits. But as I got older, got married, had kids, my youngest son had epilepsy. And we discovered this. He had his first seizure around the age of 9. And they found no reason for it. So they said it was probably a condition that a lot of children manifest at the age of 9, 10, and grow out of it around 13, 14. So we had our fingers crossed that would be the case. And he didn't have another seizure for almost a year and a half. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, wham, here's another one. And they were sporadic. There was no rhythm to them, no pattern. Might be 6 months, might be 18 months, might be 3 months, might be a week, in between them. So there was no telling. Of course, this problem did not go away at the age of 14 like we'd hoped. When he started driving, he had a seizure behind the wheel, which luckily he was on a back road and he just went through barbed wire fence, tore up his truck, but didn't hurt him or anybody else. But it scared him. And of course, his mother, being a paramedic, she knows what the downfalls are to the anticonvulsive drugs. So she did not want to have anything to do with putting him on him because of the randomness of his seizure.
Yeah, sure.
She saw more downfall to it than benefit. So she wouldn't help him at that point. So he came to me. And of course, we were divorced. So when he came to me, he said, will you help me, Dad? How can you resist, right? It's your kid. So I got him to another doctor. Got him checked out. Still no signs of any kind of epilepsy or any kind of diagnosis. They started him on a low dose of Keppra, which is generally the first anticonvulsant they go to. When he started that, it had the exact opposite effect that it was supposed to. His seizures went from sporadic and unpatternistic to now we have a pattern. There's a regular pattern to them. He took this for about 6 months. Then he went back to the doctor. They increased the dose. They became more frequent, closer together. So after another 6, 8 months, they changed the medication to a different medication. And the seizures became more and more severe. It was to the point where he was 22 when he came and talked to me. And he said, "Hey, Dad, what have you heard about all these stories about marijuana?" I just laughed, I said, "Well, to be honest, kid, I don't have a clue, I don't know anything about it. So I don't know if you ever figured it out or not." I said, "Well, I was smoking that shit every day for a lot of years, but whether it has any medical benefit, I don't know. I've heard the stories just like you have." I said, "Bottom line is there are 3 points I can make. 1, we can find out. 2, I know it won't hurt you. I do know that.
Yeah.
Number 3, if you want to try it, we can figure out how to make that happen too." So that was basically the end of the conversation. His thing was, "Well, I'll think about it." A few months went by. We had a few more conversations, had another birthday. And ultimately, it was probably for May of 2016. I actually brought it up to him. I said, "What do you think?" And he said, "Well, I just, if we lived in Colorado where it's legal, I might consider it. But, at that time, this is 2016, we had the T-Cup program in Texas, right?
Okay.
But it was for severe intractable epilepsy. You had to be diagnosed and treated by recommended for the program by 2 separate neurologists, which was hard to find any that would even consider sending you in that direction at that time. It was the very beginning. Plus, it literally had not gone into effect yet. Medicine was not available until almost the end of 2017. So it wasn't there for him. And of course, Oklahoma didn't have their medical program as of yet. At any rate, his bottom line was he just flat ass refused to break the law. And as a father, you can't argue with that, right?
Right.
And ultimately, in June of 2016, we lost him to a seizure. So that's what got me involved in it. Thank you. It still feels the same today as it did that day.
So he's your reason.
He's my reason,
Yeah.
my rhyme and everything.
So he was really put off by the possibility that he could get in trouble with the
Yeah,
law.
he was a good kid,
Yeah.
This
is why it's important for there to be laws that protect people who want to use it as medicine.
That's what I tell everybody. It's my goal is so no other parent has to endure what I do every day,
Yeah.
which, as you can see, is not very fun.
Absolutely.
That's the story of how I got involved in it. It's not a nice one by any means.
Very few people's stories are nice when they're getting involved in medical cannabis, especially
Sure.
in a state like Texas. It's got to be something that moves you.
And what we're really pushing for this year is the decriminalization.
Right. So that's really the first step to anything further.
Sure. I mean, medical, it was the first step,
Yeah.
in all honesty. Decriminalization is the next step. And as you pointed out already, we voted to decrim here in the city of Denton.
Right.
Killeen, Austin, there's
San Marcos.
San Marcos,
Yeah, Harker
Heights, and Elgin
Right.
are all cities that have decriminalized already by a popular vote of the people.
Yeah.
For those cities, those jurisdictions. San Antonio just recently got their ballot measure approved for the ballot. I believe in May they're going to have their vote, and that's the decrim. There's some other issues on their ballot as well. That's kind of why we're pushing the decrim issue. Is one thing that our lieutenant governor, who's been our biggest roadblock, is yes, Dan Patrick. And the reason why, who knows? A lot of people say it's because pharmaceutical industry. Some people say it's because the oil industry, which he has a lot of support from the oil industry. I personally think it's the private prison industry here in Texas that's the big one battling us.
That's interesting. I didn't
Well,
think about that.
they lose their bread and butter.
Of course.
But needless to say, I'm sure it's a little of all of those.
Right. Yes. They voted like 75% in some cities.
Well, there was
80% in
over 80%, I believe, in San Marcos.
It's huge. The interest was obviously gauged, and advocates like you were like, yeah, there's support for it. Let's go get some signatures. Those votes went out, turned up and voted. And now there seems to be some sort of stalling happening with the lawmakers. What's going on?
Yeah, it's different in each location.
Right.
And I don't know the exact logistics of every one. The one I know the best here is locally here in Denton. Basically, the city council voted to accept the result, but the city manager and the chief of police, the best way I can explain it in layman's terms, are in cahoots and have said, we're just not going to enforce it.
Any reason given?
Their reasoning is because state law usurps it, in their opinion.
Although lawmakers and local leaders are resisting it, a whopping 70% of Texans are supportive of not just decrim, not just legalizing medical, but recreational cannabis too. Medical advocates aren't the only ones pushing for cannabis reform in Texas, of course. As I discovered, folks across the aisle are actually finally agreeing on something. Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition is a political caucus within the Texas GOP, which was founded by Ann Lee, a woman who is now in her 90s and has never smoked a joint in her life. But Ann, like many other Republicans in Texas and other deep red states, believe that cannabis should be legal because they consider the prohibition to be a failed policy that has undermined American liberties. The group says that legalization aligns with the conservative principles of limited government, personal responsibility, fiscal responsibility, and economic opportunity. To understand where the two sides of advocacy in Texas are overlapping, I sat down with John Baucom, political director of the Texas chapter of Republicans Against Marijuana Prohibition.
We're quite behind the times when it comes to our cannabis laws. So I got involved with RAMP back in 2012. I met Ann Lee, who was the founder of RAMP. She told me about RAMP, and then had an opportunity to really get together with some of my other young Republican colleagues and working with Ann and her husband Bob to kind of get RAMP off the ground, and then going after more effectively how can we recruit kind of within the grassroots of the GOP to advocate for reform of our cannabis laws. But we do have several chapters around the country in different states that are kind of independent from one another and independent, from our oversight as well. But it's exciting to see that there is a caucus within the Republican Party that's advocating for reform.
So historically, the GOP has been averse to marijuana. Do you feel like that is changing with the new generation then?
It's difficult to say. I think it's funny to say the generational thing because you have Ann, who's in her 90s, who's a strong advocate, for marijuana policy reform. And I think there are people in every generation that are supportive of, less government intrusion into the individual decisions of folks. And then there are people who are kind of the opposite end of that spectrum. So we like to think that attitudes are shifting. And I think we've seen that in the legislature, specifically with the Texas House, where, a decade ago when I started working on these policies, was kind of taboo. It wasn't a comfortable position to go into a legislator's office and bring up marijuana policy because they were unfamiliar with it. It's not something they really wanted to discuss. But over the last several sessions, we have seen some bills reducing the criminal penalties that have passed the House. So I think there are eyes opening, certainly with the young Republicans. When I was the state chairman of our state organization, I think we had a lot of people within the group that were advocates for reform, and we joined a coalition group called Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy, which includes the Republican Liberty Caucus, also kind of nonpartisan or even some left-wing groups as well. So everybody kind of coming together under that umbrella of smarter enforcement of marijuana policy. And from RAMP's perspective, from a conservative point of view, we like to talk about limited government, fiscal responsibility, allowing for individual liberty and people to make their own choices as long as they're not harming another individual. We can see what's gone out throughout the country where there's been, reforms and the sky hasn't fallen like some of the prohibitionists said they would. We really haven't seen increases in teen marijuana use. And all we're doing is sort of wasting time, ruining people's lives with these convictions. And there has to be a smarter way forward. And I think the Texas House and the Republican members of the House have started to see the light there. And in the Senate, which is led by Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, I think we have a steeper hill to climb and more challenges to not only educate him and the other senators, but also to have the senators kind of stand up with the courage to go against the Lieutenant Governor and try to bring this forward, which has been a struggle over the last several sessions.
Best of luck to you and the rest of your coalition in having some movement with those bills. Hopefully we can catch up again in the next legislative session and see if anything's changed.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Kind of the joke is, what egg cracks first, something in Texas or something at the federal level? We saw that with hemp. When we would advocate for hemp, we would kind of fall on deaf ears. But as soon as the Fed passed the farm bill that allowed for legal cultivation of hemp, Texas was right on its heels, passing their own version of our own hemp bill to allow Texas farmers to choose to grow another crop. So, we'll keep working at it and we'll keep chipping away and hopefully we'll have some success.
Finally, there's something that we can all agree on: access to the God-given bountiful plant of cannabis. While I was visiting Texas, they were having one of their rare legislative sessions, which only happens once every 2 years for about 3 months at a time. So I checked in with Texas State Representative, Democrat John Rosenthal, to see how much support there's really going on among Texas lawmakers for undoing the smokable hemp ban, for statewide decriminalization, and for expanding the medical program.
So right now, the way that it works in the states is you have a veritable checkerboard of different types of legal landscapes. So a checkerboard of different types of restrictions and to possess it, or it could be completely legal. It really runs the whole spectrum. And so this is one where federal legislation would really be, in my mind, would really be preferred. But in lieu of that, the biggest steps that we could take would be as the individual states to decriminalize or outright legalize marijuana.
So we saw hemp legalized nationally in 2018, and then in 2020, Texas lawmakers put a ban on processing and manufacturing of smokable hemp. This I personally don't understand. I understand that there should be personal freedoms in Texas. That seems to be a very deep value. And I would think that allowing the hemp industry to flourish would allow for rural economic development, jobs, So I really did not understand when I saw that smokable hemp was banned. But you've put forward a new House bill to change that. What does the support look like?
I'm with you. This Texas state government that I'm a member of does a lot of stuff that I don't understand.
Yeah.
But this one here to me is really mind-boggling. So you can use hemp for all manner of things. You can do the CBD oil and all of that sort of stuff. You can own the plants. You can grow the plants, but it cannot be labeled as intended for use smoking. So I can buy big old fat commercially rolled cigars that I can smoke, There's really not that much difference. And to be able to have the product legal in so many other ways, but it only cannot be labeled, as for smoking. It can't be packaged or labeled like that. And it just kind of boggles my imagination. I'm not sure how that law comes about. I wasn't part of that debate, when it was done. But this bill here, the one to change that, we talk about wanting people's personal freedoms. And on one of the committees that I serve is Agriculture and Livestock Committee. And the chair of the committee is a very conservative lawmaker, but he's with me on this. He maybe he's sort of a libertarian bent, but his litmus test for legislation is, does it make more freedom or less freedom? And this one would be more freedom. So I'm very optimistic to get this one at least out of committee. So hopefully we can get some traction on this. I'd love to see it pass.
Yeah. We'll be following along with that one. I think that's a very interesting one that appeals to both sides.
We're talking about an issue of personal liberty, but we're also talking about folks who have been incarcerated for stuff that's really not dangerous to themselves, hardly at all, but certainly not to others. So the people of Texas, we pay for that jail system. It's a draw on Texas revenue, and our jails are overcrowded. And so having people incarcerated for these kinds of infractions is really detrimental on a lot of levels. And our criminal justice system in Texas is not geared toward rehabilitating folks and getting returned into society. The next goal should be to reduce the prison population and minimize the damage that's been done incarcerating people who are generally innocent in every other way and contributing members of society. So I'd like to make those arguments with the conservatives. And let's see if we can bring some of them on board for that too.
Yeah, well, that's terrific, and I wish you the best of luck with both of your bills. Texas lawmakers are currently working through a handful of newly proposed bills that would consider decriminalization, medical program expansion, and even adult use legalization. In the meantime, the medical marijuana industry in Texas is running on very strict regulations. If you missed it, check out our episode from February 3rd, 2023, about how to get a medical card in Texas, New Hampshire, and Florida. That's where I learned about the Texas Compassionate Use Program, or the TCUP program, and I was told how the law initially mandated that medical delivery drivers, all of whom come from Austin, have to drive out to the far edges of the state and back again by that same evening. Oh my gosh, the rules. Like how? I wanted to know what it's been like working in the Texas medical industry, where that medicine is coming from, how patients are getting it, and how companies are dealing with having drivers delivering weed in a technically illegal state. So I checked in with Terrence Bow, one of the first medical cannabis delivery drivers in Texas, who is now the community relations manager at Good Blends, one of just 3 medical cannabis dispensaries currently serving the entire Lone Star State.
I am an educator by trade. I came from the special needs population. I taught what's called adapted physical education. So I worked with special needs population for really half my adult life. Took some time off, came back to Texas to be closer to family, and applied for a health and wellness job. Little did I know that it was for medical cannabis.
Oh, you didn't even know when you were applying?
Because advertising in Texas is very strict.
Right.
So you can't just come out and say, hey, we're hiring for cannabis jobs. At the time, they couldn't.
Wow.
At the time, I think it was maybe 6 or 7 of us at the company when I got hired here in Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw it as an opportunity, similar. I said, hey, I didn't know this was a thing in Texas. This is going to be booming. And I get a chance to help people in a way that I've never really explored before. So yeah, I'm down.
What year was it that you first got into it?
This was 2018, pre-pandemic.
So that was when it was just starting to come into effect, like dispensaries were starting to get their feet on the ground and they were hiring people to try and start this new business. But As far as I understand it, Texas medical marijuana is really, really capped. There's loads and loads of rules and restrictions. What kind of products you guys, I guess, sell?
Yep.
And where they come from? Like, who produces them?
So in Texas, the way that the laws are written, everything has to be produced in-house by one of the licensees.
Ah,
So it's all seed to sale. So we do everything in-house. We have a master cultivator team that makes the plant. We have our production team, which is filled with scientists and chemists and chefs to help produce the product as well. And then, we bottle it, we extract it. We have a whole team that does all that in-house. And then we have a delivery team as well, too. So we take it all around the state of Texas to make sure we get it to customers. And then we have our pickup locations as well, too. So we do everything in-house. Nothing is outsourced.
wow.
And that's the way the state has it to be run, which it has its benefits, right? We know where the product is coming from. We trust it. I touch the product with my hands myself, so when I speak with customers and consumers, there's no ifs, ands, and buts about where they're getting their product or what's inside of it. We test it ourselves, so we know what's in it, and I think that kind of adds that quality and that level of love that these other companies or CBD or hemp companies and things that you're getting shipped from other areas, you just
Mhm.
might not get.
Yeah, definitely. Now, when we're talking about the kind of products that folks can get out there on the medical marijuana side, we have previously discussed on this show that it is an incredibly low cap for THC. So on the recreational CBD market, you're only allowed up to 0.3% THC in the product. On the medical side, the cap is 1% THC.
Correct.
What kind of products do you carry? What's allowed in Texas?
Good question. Unfortunately, currently, flower is not allowed in Texas. So for all my people who are interested in getting that quick onset with the flower, that's not possible yet. But we do carry the widest variety of products in the state of Texas. We're really proud about that. Our research and design team does an amazing job of taking products that we use in our other states and then making them applicable for Texans. But we've got everything from tinctures to lozenges to gummies to capsules to beverages to chocolates.
So edibles are allowed and
Yes,
tinctures are allowed, but the
yes.
raw bud, the flower itself to smoke, that's not allowed.
Currently, that's a no. It's a no go.
Interesting. How many patients do you guys serve, and what's the furthest that they are from you in Austin?
So currently, I believe we are serving around 15 to 20,000 patients. The program itself has around 46,000 patients, and obviously not all of those are active patients, but we have quite a large market share and continuing to grow. And then as far as how far we go, we try to get all over the state of Texas. It's a large state, obviously, you know that. So
Mhm.
there are some restrictions that we have to make accommodations for as far as travel goes. But we do try to make any sort of accommodations for patients who are in the further parts of the state, whether it's like a meetup or a pickup spot in a location that's a little bit further out. That way we can serve the most patients as possible. And as we continue to grow, we'll continue to open up even more to make things more accessible so that all Texans can take advantage of it. But again, the laws, the way that they were written, allow us to have one hub to grow and produce everything out of.
Hmm.
And previously, all of the medicine had to be back in that hub after 24 hours. So
Right.
if we travel way up to way North Dallas or way, East Texas, if something didn't get delivered or dropped off to the patient, it had to come back to the facility at the end of the night. So it makes things kind of challenging, and we have to be really strategic about how we meet up and the times we do, just to keep our drivers and keep everybody safe on the road. Because remember, they're driving on the road with federally illegal drugs,
Yeah.
right? And as well as that, they're carrying, the cash and the money or whatever else they need to. So safety is priority for everybody involved.
Do you have an agreement with the police force out there that as a medical marijuana company, you will have drivers on the road and they're going to be driving around with cannabis products and cash and like, don't arrest our folks?
Yeah, most definitely. So the program, luckily for us, is monitored and governed by the Department of Public Safety. So
Okay.
it's great that they're aware of that we have drivers on the road. Our drivers are highly monitored while they're on the roads. There's cameras in every single car, and this goes for all the licensees, not just us. You have to have a certain level of safety implemented in the vehicles to make sure that everything is safe. The products are locked up and secured as well too. So it really is. There's room for growth, obviously, but the precautions that are in place keep everybody as safe as possible. And we have constant feedback with DPS to let them know, hey, we've run into this roadblock. Is this something that we can look at adjusting and changing in the future?
That's good to hear. I like to hear about progress in Texas. After the break, we'll take a look at what kinds of products the good folks of Texas have been enjoying from the hemp plant, who's selling them, where they're able to enjoy them, and we'll take a look at the state's growing cannabis culture, which has really been springing up in the wake of hemp legalization. While I was driving around Texas, it was easy to spot signs outside little stores and in strip malls that said CBD, Delta 8, and even somehow Delta 9 THC for sale. I wanted to know what I could actually get at these small CBD shops and who was selling it. So I stopped into a random CBD store on the outskirts of Waco, and it had a sign saying that it was first responder owned. Even still, I was surprised to hear their most frequent customers looking to use low THC cannabis to unwind after a hard day's work were the local police officers. Hi there, how are you? Stopping for lunch and I saw there was a CBD shop, so I thought I'd come in and check out what you guys have.
Right ahead. This is CBD on this side, and this is Delta 8 and Delta 9 with the THC on this side.
Delta 9?
It's the same as in Colorado and California, only in edibles. You can't do Delta 9 in the vapes or the flower because that would be like smoking marijuana. The way they make it, they condense the Delta 9, which is the marijuana, and they add the hemp to it to make it get right below the level that's legal for the Texas Farm Act bill.
Wow, okay, so there's some gray area that you have to sort of work with here. Is it like local companies or?
Our biggest distributor's out of Austin area. Hometown Hero is one of our biggest. So just about everything is legal here with the exception of the actual smoking of marijuana. We do have the CB Night gummies, chocolate bars, which are fabulous, and the CB Night water soluble. CBG is CB Go, which gives you energy. CB Night are all the terpenes for rest, relaxation, sleep. Wow. And then the CBGA and the CBDA is the immunity to keep COVID away.
Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know there were so many different kinds.
Yeah. Like for instance, these CB, they have the Delta 9, CBD, CBC, and CBG.
So the way that this is legal is because you have to keep the Delta 9 below a certain percentage. Wow.
That's why we can get away with it in the edibles. And my daughter owns a shop and she's a police officer, so everything is legit.
She owns this shop? Wow, and she's a police officer?
Yes, so all the policemen in Waco support her. They come in here and get their CBD, or when they're off for 2 weeks, they get
the Delta 9. That's really interesting.
It takes about 7 to 10 days to get out of your system.
So the police officers are okay with using it because like the CBD stuff's legal?
Oh, yes.
Completely.
And this will not show up in any drug test. Most of them use the water soluble, the triple strength, because they need the extra go to stay up late hours and stuff.
Of course. So I bet it helps them relax after a tough shift as well. Wow.
So just feel free to
Thank
look
you.
around. If you have any
so
questions, let me know.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Truly a sign of the times. I could not believe I found the Waco Police Department's favorite cannabinoid store. After stopping in Denton, Fort Worth, and Waco, I thought I had a pretty good idea of how Texans were enjoying hemp products. They were obviously buying it from these smaller shops or strip malls, popping a gummy or some tincture at home, and then enjoying a quiet night in. Getting high on the down low. But boy was I wrong. To find out how Texans were actually mindfully experiencing cannabis products together, I made my way down to Austin, and trust me when I say they are still keeping it weird. Not only does Austin have all 3 medical cannabis dispensaries, so all medical weed is grown there and all industry workers live nearby, there's also plenty going on with recreational consumption and community. To start, Austin boasts several super cool CBD cafes where friends can get together and have infused drinks and food, which is a much more social way to enjoy the plant than my usual smoking session at home. Austin also had some really warm and welcoming CBD stores, some of which were founded by cannabis-loving friends, like Greenbelt Botanicals, a CBD shop that had this unique smoke lounge kind of vibe. And Austin even has some spas like Spa Sway, which offers a dreamy, relaxing CBD-infused massage. So it's obvious that the folks in Austin were very open to the idea of cannabinoids, hence the city's major boom of CBD companies and stores. So, as another massive ice storm rolled into town, I sat down in my hotel lobby with the founders of one of Austin's leading CBD gummy brands, Early Bird CBD, to understand what it's been like for the locally owned companies and what kinds of people have been turning to their CBD. So this is where you guys were living and you decided as soon as hemp was legalized, we're going to get into the CBD world. What was it like when that farm bill passed and you were like, okay, hemp's legal, CBD is legal in Texas?
And we started it out as a marketplace selling other brands' products. So dipping our toes in the water for probably about a year before starting to develop this product.
So where were those products from?
Colorado. So they were, mostly Colorado manufacturers. The products that really sold really well were the ones that had a small amount of THC in them.
Right.
But everything in our products is derived from hemp, and so by definition, it has less than 0.3% THC by weight, and the THC in it is derived from hemp.
This is fascinating to me. I can't believe there's such a small margin in there. Everybody's terrified of the idea of THC. But in other states, and some of the neighboring states, like New Mexico or Oklahoma, like you can have, in Massachusetts, we have concentrates up to 80%.
For sure, yeah.
So what do you produce, and where do you produce it?
So the majority of our products and our hemp in the lab that we work with is in Colorado. So when this
still from there.
Yeah, so it's still coming from there. There are labs and producers in Texas that have come around in the past couple years.
Yeah.
But we went to Colorado because that's where the history of the industry developed, and there were ready to go labs that could do what we needed to do.
Right. Yeah. Who buys it? Who do you often see coming into your store?
Initially when this product launched, we thought that, say, head shops and vape shops might be good retail partners because, hey, I'm looking for something in kind of the cannabis space, that's where I might go. But what we found was, and this was through some of our just connections having lived in Austin for so long, that places like coffee shops, coffee and beer bars, boutique grocery stores actually were really good retail partners because our product kind of fits in with that recreational energy. So our product specifically has about 2.5 milligrams of THC and 12.5 milligrams of CBD. So it's considered a microdose, but for a lot of people, that's a really effective dose. They're going to feel the effects, but they're going to be, euphoric, but also functional. Right. And so actually a lot of our customer base tends to be young working professionals, moms and dads, retired age folks. I think people that actually really enjoy the benefits of a small amount of THC, but might not be the same folks that would go into a dispensary in Colorado and would be kind of overwhelmed, not only by the amount of choices, but the potency of a lot of those things. And so the reception's been really good, and I think we have a lot of people who actually are, hey, I've never tried anything like this before, but I really like the effects. And so in a way, having it be derived from hemp, having it be a full spectrum hemp product, so you've got the CBD and the THC, I think has made it more accessible than say, hey, here's a 20 milligram THC edible that for a lot of people will just knock them over.
So this is like easing people into the idea of a cannabis-derived product, like in the most gentle way.
I think so, yeah, and frankly, I think there's just a growing demand. I mean, even outside of Texas, you look at some other brands like Can and some of these folks that are really focusing more on a microdose product so that it can be used, you can have more than one, or if you want to have something that's more comparable to a drink or two. For most people, like for a lot of people, 10 milligrams is not comparable to a glass of wine. But our product, we often say, is probably comparable to a couple glasses of wine in terms of its effect. We've had it's been surprising in that a lot of our customers are either people who maybe used cannabis in the past but want something that's a little more dialed down and approachable but still offers some of those kind of euphoric effects, or people that have never used it before but are looking for a supplement to their glass of wine or beer in the evening, and are really enjoying how it makes them feel.
I've got some friends back in Dallas who say that they can get flower on the legacy market, on the underground market, that comes straight from California or Colorado, and it's in the package, the original packages. It just didn't necessarily test at a very high percentage out there, so somehow it got on the black market out here. So I guess, there is still that option for folks that just straight up want marijuana and don't mind going against the law. And I'll tell you, I tried some early bird CBD gummies while I was there. I wasn't expecting much because it's like 99% CBD. I smoke a lot of THC and edibles don't usually do anything for me. So I took 4 of them, and I was shocked to find that I actually felt a really full body relaxation. My breathing slowed down, but my mind was really clear, and I slept like an absolute baby. So I'm starting to see the upside of not having access to high THC products all the time. For my last stop, I really wanted to know more about how legal cannabinoids were changing the culture in Texas. It's not like you can get infused cannabis drinks at the rodeo just yet, but Austinites have been coming together and forming communities around how helpful they're finding CBD for their physical and mental health. As of the start of this year, there are stressed out 9-to-5ers who have been coming together in Austin to puff on some terpene-rich CBD flower and do an hour of yoga after work. There's also a group of Austin suburban moms who have started getting together to toke on some pre-rolled blunts and talk about how hard parenting can be. And from Austin to Houston to San Antonio, there are canna-curious Gen Zers and boomers, all of whom want to move away from alcohol, and they're coming together at puff, hemp, and paint nights instead. Even if it is low THC, there are all kinds of community activities that are being paired with legal cannabinoids. And in Austin, a lot of it has been taking place at one specific CBD store and studio that was honestly unlike any other I'd seen so far. I'd heard it being called Austin's most inclusive cannabis dispensary. So I stopped into Mary Jane's store in South Austin to see how cannabis communities have been forming there and in other states just like it without high THC pot. And my goodness, Mary Jae did not disappoint. So when I walk into Mary Jae, it looks just like a dispensary back home. Out in California and Colorado, it looks just like those dispensaries. There is a massive array of pipes and grinders and paper from companies that I know like Blazy Susan and Raw. There are vapes by packs. Like you can buy yourself a little vape pen here and fill it with CBD flower. There's tincture, Papa and Barkley CBD drops, Mr. Moxley's artisan mints with CBD and CBN, which I guess helps you sleep well. There are live resin gummies. You can get salted caramel with Delta 8 here. Vape cartridges, there's disposable vapes, and they've got names like Blue Dream, Pineapple Express, OG Kush, Wedding Cake, all those names that we know. The only difference is here they're Delta 8 THC, 78% per gram, or they're a little bit of Delta 9 THC mixed with mostly CBD or CBN. And now if I walk a little further into the store, there are some gorgeous handheld pipes and rolling trays. Ooh, and there's even matching earrings for some of them, which is cool. And then there's bigger bongs and little vaporizers that you can buy, like flower vaporizers. And then as you go further into the store, there's actually bud, high CBD and CBG flower inside like plastic cubes. And they've got little magnifying glasses on top, and you can look at the buds and see all the crystals just like back home. I've got in front of me sativas, hybrids, indicas. The only difference really is that it's CBD heavy flower with just a little bit of THC in it. So like the Hawaiian haze that I'm looking at right now, it looks really crystally. It's got little orange hairs. It's 17% CBD and about 0.8% THC. They've got the terpenes listed, myrcene, pinene, humulene, so I can tell what I might feel from this. The only difference really is that there's such little THC in it, but it tells you what it's good for. Anxiety, mood boosting, getting shit done, not falling asleep at work. And all of it comes from the US. It's all seems to be made in Oregon. Some of this stuff seems to be grown in Tennessee, which is kind of cool. And some of it's organic. You can pick if you want it indoor grown, outdoor grown. It's just like a normal dispensary, and it's right here in South Austin. The price for these flowers, it seems like a pre-roll is about $8, a 10-pack is about $45, and it goes up to about $45 for an eighth of flower. So you can grab everything you need here. A nice squishy bud, a grinder, tray, pipe, and head on home and get a little bit jolly. Or you can get some gummies, some tincture, and of course some of the merch here is super dope. There's a boob pillow, people. A boob pillow. I think I'm in love. Then I got to chat with one of the owners and the namesake of Mary Jae, Jay. She told me all about the demand in the local community, especially the LGBTQ community, for a space where people can consume hemp and connect with themselves and each other. And it lives up to the hype, girl. It's very cool.
It's what was in my head and I wish it existed. And so to be able to bring it to the people and them enjoy it, we've just celebrated 5 years in October, so it just feels amazing. And the next phase is a lounge.
That's so cool.
It's so exciting.
There's so many people in other states that are trying to do a dispensary next to a lounge, but
Yes.
there's so much like bureaucratic red tape around it. But because it's CBD,
You got it. And it's like the Wild West. We really don't, this year they'll start having people come and check, like if we have COAs on our products and things like that, but there's really nobody checking or doing, and so it's exciting. We've already done the concept other places that we partnered with, and we sold out. We went viral on TikTok, and so we, people were just like, where's more? We need more classes. I was like, I know, we need more than one every other week.
All right.
So, and then just to have like all the instructors on board, like I have a dance class that I go to here in town that are just like various ages of women and like trans community, and it's so beautiful. And so a couple of my instructors are cannabis friendly, and I'm like, would y'all want to do something on the side? And they're like, I've been waiting for this my whole life. Like, there's nothing like it. I'm like, I know.
Yeah.
There's not.
There isn't, and there's a lot of demand for it. Like people want to connect with themselves and others. Yeah.
When we had our other class that we partnered with, it was called Smoke and Stretch, and it was yin yoga with cannabis. And you had the option of a pre-roll or an edible. And people would come in, and like before we'd start, we'd be in a circle and we'd say why we're here, what's hurting, what do we want to work on, or just your intentions. And most every lady was like, I just can't believe I'm in here with people smoking.
Right.
I'm usually in my car trying to spray myself off before I go to the gym or the yoga studio because people judge you. And a lot of mamas. And they're like, so to be able to be like, no one's judging me. I'm like,
yes, that's the community that we've been trying to get together for years.
You know what I'm saying? It's what we've been doing in our house for years.
Yeah.
Now to bring it to the community.
That's it. That's so great.
Yeah.
This place is like incredibly curated. How do you pick the brands that you're going to be selling here?
So I kind of have a list, honestly. They have to be women-owned, family-owned, like BIPOC, queer-owned, people of color. You have to hit one of those to be on my shelves. Honestly, you can go to every other shop and you'll find the same thing. I want to sell who I am.
I love that.
I want to lift my people. So everything is handpicked by me, every single piece. And I know sometimes people come in, they're like, you're not taking every color. I was like, they don't speak to me. No, and that's just how it works. So everything, like, it has a purpose and intention. The way it's displayed, like I want you to get lost in it, like if you're sitting up and pulling up to your setup.
And you can feel that because I've just been walking around here for 20 minutes and I keep finding new things that I haven't quite looked at yet.
And everybody does it. They leave and they're like, how come I didn't see this? It's like, you'll miss a lot of things the first go around. It's not just a bunch of stuff on pegs. And you kind of pick through it.
That's what a lot of CBD shops are around here. It's a lot of stuff on pegs on the walls, and it's like separated by this is CBD and this is Delta 8, and that's it. But this place has the feel of a regular dispensary.
And I love that. I have people come in all the time that travel, like for ACL or South by Southwest, or just traveling in general now that we're allowed to.
Yeah.
But people come in from legal states and they come in, they're like, oh my God, I'm home.
Yeah.
What you had? I'm like, all right.
It doesn't feel like an awkward buying experience. I went into a couple other shops and I was like, it feels like I'm being pushed to buy one thing or the other thing, and I don't feel like there's anything that really sparks something in me to want to buy it. Like the pipes, the one hitters.
It's just all lined up.
They're the same
row,
thing.
Same colors.
I want every grinder that you have in here. They're so cool.
Are you kidding me?
So you've also got the bigger name brands that people recognize.
Definitely. And because I use them. I love them personally, and honestly, everything that comes in here, whether it's cannabis or a lifestyle product, I personally test everything.
Nice.
Everything. And then I've been through, if something's broken, I go through the customer service because I want that experience so I can also help my people.
I'm in love with it, and I want to buy everything. This is way cool.
And we are geared towards women, and that was the thing. There wasn't a place for us. Like, there's smoke shops all over the places and dispensaries, but it's all the same, and it wasn't curated towards a woman. I want pink. I want gold. You know what I mean? I want bougie.
Yeah, and it's gorgeous. There's a teacup here, and I'm very British, and I want high tea in it.
Fashionably high. They're not even around anymore. Like a lot of these pieces are limited edition, and that's another thing. A lot of things, if you see it, you better get it because you probably won't ever see it again.
Wow.
We have stuff from Costa Rica, Argentina, like all over the world.
Jeez. And I saw that some of your bud is like Oregon and some of it's Tennessee.
Yes. So Oregon is who we originally carried from the beginning. They just do it right.
Yeah.
They've done it right.
They grow well.
Do you know what I mean? And then we have carried some Texas strains. I just haven't found a strain or a farmer that's consistent enough for my people. I want to bring them super high quality. And I do try samples of things. I just haven't, we're not there yet. Give us a couple more years and I feel like we'll definitely be there. But as of right now, the people that have already been doing it, it just seems right.
I know what's up.
They send me samples. I'm like, wait, this is hemp flower?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
You know, it smells. I was just smelling it. It smells just like any other flower I've ever smelled before, and it looks it too. Then Jay explained to me the real loophole in the legal CBD industry that's letting store owners like her in Texas and other states sell what is essentially full-blown cannabis. As you may know, THC is produced by heating the raw, dried-out bud, a process called decarboxylation, which changes it from one of the non-intoxicating compounds, THCA, into the intoxicating compound of THC.
We have a new release that just came out yesterday. It is a 1 gram rose cone filled with our first THCA flower. And it is fucking velvety smooth. It's a purple strain, but it is fucking lovely.
How is it THCA? Isn't it?
That's our new gray area loophole here in Texas.
Wait, but when you smoke THCA,
it converts over.
Converts to THC.
And I'm selling it to you in the raw form. What you do with it outside my walls is up to you.
So it is THC
You can crush
flower.
it into a juice.
Right.
Without ever decarbing it if you wanted to get the benefits of the THCA and not the psychoactive compound from it. Or you can bake it or hit it with heat and you can get the psychoactive properties.
Wait a minute.
This is the new gray area in Texas.
So you can get full on marijuana, but
it's
just not.
It's still at the 0.3 and everything at its dry weight.
Right.
But once you convert it, that's up to you.
Wow.
And whether you know to do that or not, or you're juicing it, or
yeah.
Yeah.
Good Lord. Okay. Amazing. That is incredible. So there's always ways around, right?
Loopholes, gray zone, gray area. We live in it here until this place goes fucking
fully legal.
We're literally dissecting this plant. Like people from legal states will come in, what the hell is CBN?
Yeah.
And they're starting to see it their legal states where THC and CBN or the CBG, and people are like, what the fuck is that? Or of course the ultimate question, what the hell is Delta 8?
Yeah.
I'm used to like just THC, what the hell is the difference between 9 and 8? I'm like, well, you're used to 9. This is what it is. We have to call it this because, you know, and I break it all down for them and they're just like, what the fuck? I was like, yeah, pretty much this is the life we live.
It's all the same plant. You've just got to have these certain strict rules about it.
Yes, and I think that's where people get confused. They're like, all right, is it diet weed? Like, what's up CBD? I was like, literally grown the same way, hold the same way, same everything. She just contains less THC. She has to be at a 0.3. You can have a whatever. That's the only difference.
And there's still benefits from it, and you still get the minor terpenes and cannabinoids.
A lot of people like it better.
Yeah.
I have a lot of old schoolers that are stoners, and they're just like, I can't handle it anymore.
Yeah.
It's like too fucking strong these days. They got kids, they have careers. So a lot of people I see crossing over to CBD, especially during the day, and then maybe a little something at night.
Yeah.
A lot of people, especially the CBD flower.
Do you know CBD flower is incredibly difficult to get in Massachusetts?
Really?
Everybody wants the THC, so the higher percentage is THC is better, right? I don't like the higher percentage. I want something that's maybe 12%.
That's reasonable. And
They
honestly,
don't
the highest
have
isn't
it.
the best.
No, it's not.
But people think that.
Yeah.
Because they're not educated on it. But I did not know that.
You can't find CBD flower, like good, well-grown CBD flower, unless you go to certain dispensaries and they're like, we have CBD flower, and they shout it from the rooftops because it's really rare.
Wow.
Because everyone just wants THC. I wish there was a CBD-ish shop like this where I am, where I could just come for low-grade THC stuff. And it's just not really available where I'm at.
That's crazy. I didn't know that.
So hopefully when it does legalize, eventually, one day it will legalize at the federal level. You guys are set up to stock THC. Do you think you'll switch?
That is the goal. We literally have all our vendors, like you mentioned, Papa and Marjorie. They're all in legal states. They're like, honey, we're ready to send you the other stuff. I'm like, I would take it if I could. But, they're ready for us too. So the plan is to be fully integrated and like switch and actually carry everything. I want to carry a lot of CBD stuff because that works for so many people.
Yeah,
so
it does. Jay also told me she and her partner Francesca had been working hard to set up a studio space, which they were transforming next door to start hosting Austin's highly anticipated members-only CBD social club, where they're now holding community consumption events like smoking yoga, puff and paint evenings, stone drag makeup lessons, hangouts for local canna moms, and much more.
I was like, I have to show you.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Okay, so we're gonna go check out the space next door. Ooh, so it's just the same size.
But our designers have planned it's going to be super cut off from the streets. It's kind of like a speakeasy.
Yeah.
You wouldn't know what it is,
right?
Unless you're a member. But you'll come in and it'll be kind of like a little area you can like lounge and chill in.
Nice.
And then you'll go through a portal of like materials until you get to the actual space. Dancing, yoga, baking classes, gardening classes.
Oh my God.
Everything. Anything. Yes.
Yo, that's gorgeous. And there's nothing offered like that here.
Nothing, honestly.
Were you just hearing from people in your community that that's what they wanted?
Yes.
Yeah.
They wanted more of it.
Yeah.
The one class that we did, it just wasn't enough. The community was like, more, please, like other things, paint and puff, toke and twerk. I'm like,
toke and twerk?
Yes, learn a twerk dance.
I love that.
It's going to be amazing just to be able to have a space and like cut it off from the street and just have canna moms in here. We're going to have classes for them just to talk. That's going to be an emotional one.
Canna moms?
Yes.
That's a huge community.
Huge community here. And they're just like, do you know the moms? How do they talk to their kids? I'm like, I have to get you all together.
Oh my God.
I can't talk to you separately. I need you all together.
Yeah.
So
that's going to be like a support group, like a therapy session.
Yes.
But with a little bit of CBD.
Yes.
This is a gorgeous vision.
Relax and just be and enjoy themselves. Like, they're always taking care of everybody else.
Yes.
So it just makes sense.
That is so gorgeous. What a cool vision.
Yes, and you'll have to come back.
Oh, absolutely. I'll come back for
This
it.
is like the bare bones of her. We just got her painted.
Oh my God, you could not smile meeting Jay. She is what is changing here in Texas. The kind of community that cannabis folk are building out here. Yeah, they've got to go around the gray areas of the law, but they are still getting together. They are still smoking, relaxing, connecting, enjoying the plant. I feel really invigorated by her mission, and I cannot wait to see what comes next for Texas. Since we recorded in early 2023, Jay has now opened her social club to the Austin cannabis community, and there are now several weekly events where locals can connect over cannabinoids in South Austin at Mary Jae. Despite the fact that Texans only have legal access to low THC cannabis, it feels like they've really been making something out of CBD and the other legal parts of the plant. With advocates like Gramps who are tirelessly pushing for legal and medical reforms, and community icons like Jay who make space for events that bring people together over the plant, I can really see how far cannabis culture has already come in Texas. And like many other states without legal THC, the appreciation and acceptance of cannabis here is only on the up. A big thanks to all our guests this episode, and a special shout out to Texas cannabis advocate Piper Lindeen for her help producing the show. Again, if you haven't already, go check out our episode from February 3rd about how to get a medical cannabis card in Texas and other states. Next week, we'll be chatting about infused dinners with cannabis chef Hawaii Mike Salmon.
But we've done guests from 2 to 200 plus catered events. And in the beginning, the hardest part was figuring out and dialing in the dosage, really getting that to a point where we're not laying people out, especially when you're talking about, one, doing it for a lot of different people, but two, doing it for people who have different tolerances, and then on top of that, different egos.
Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast wherever you're listening right now so you don't miss the next episode. And follow us on social media at Different Leaf, and I'm on social media at Brit the British. Make sure you've got your spring cultural issue of Different Leaf the magazine, which is out now at select retailers and available at differentleaf.com.